Good morning and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. My name is Bhante Suddhaso, and this morning I'll be speaking a bit about the 8 precepts. So we can start by paying homage to the Buddha, and then I'll give a short talk on the topic, and then if there's any questions, I'll take any questions that you might have. So we'll go ahead and start with homage to the Buddha, and then we'll get started from there. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. And hello to the people checking in online. So hello to Julie, Manal, Kumu, Richard, Douglas, Bhumika, Maria, and everyone else who's watching. And Niranjan. So recently I had spoken about the 5 precepts. Today I'll speak about the 8 precepts, which is an expanded list of precepts which for monastics, this is an essential part of our everyday life. For lay people, it's common to take the 8 precepts for short periods of time every now and then during one's life. And it's also occasionally a lay person will decide to commit to the 8 precepts for extended periods of time, sometimes several months or several years. Or even to take on a semi-monastic lifestyle founded on following the 8 precepts indefinitely. But most commonly when lay people incorporate the 8 precepts into their life, it's for short periods of time, such as when staying at monasteries. It's normal to follow the 8 precepts when staying in a monastery, and also to take it for 24 hours on the Uposatha days, so the full moon and new moon days. These are common ways that these practices are used. It is important, though, to understand that the 8 precepts are a bit different from the 5. So the 5 precepts are basic moral principles, which are about avoiding doing things that are inherently evil, inherently unwholesome. And that persists in 4 of the 8 precepts. So 4 of the 8 precepts are identical to 4 of the 5 precepts. So just to briefly recap, the 5 precepts are not killing any sentient being, not taking anything that doesn't belong to us, so not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, such as sexual assault or infidelity, not telling deliberate lies, and not using alcohol or any other intoxicant of that sort. So the 8 precepts keeps 4 of those. So the 8 precepts are not killing any sentient being, not stealing, not engaging in any sexual activity. So the 3rd of the 8 is different from the 3rd of the 5. Then the 4th one, again, not telling lies. 5th one, not using intoxicants. So that's all similar. The only change being that the 3rd becomes complete celibacy. And then there's 3 more. So the 6th one is not eating after noon or before dawn. So one only eats solid food or substantial food between dawn and noon. The 7th one is to refrain from any kind of entertainment and beautification. So dance, song, music, shows, jewelry, cosmetics, perfumes, and everything like that. And then the 8th one is not to use luxurious beds. So again, we look at something like not killing sentient beings or not telling lies and or not cheating on one's partner. And we can very clearly see that these are moral principles. But then you hear something like not eating after noon or not wearing makeup. And you think, well, that there's nothing evil about eating dinner and putting on some earrings. There's nothing evil about having a king size bed with a bunch of pillows. Like there's nothing evil about listening to some music or watching a movie. And that's true. These things are not inherently evil. Because the eight precepts are not about moral principles, but rather they're about renunciation. They're about learning how to train the mind in letting go of attachments and desires. They're learning how to train the mind in contentment and simplicity. So this is what makes it for monastics a permanent fixture of our lives, because the monastic life is about renunciation and simplicity, a dedication to training the mind in letting go. Um, but for lay people, the eight precepts, on the other hand, are something which is picked up occasionally as a way of testing one's practice and strengthening one's ability to let go a little bit, but while still giving one the freedom to live an ordinary lay life. So again, for lay people, the five precepts are to be one's daily practice. So every day one follows the five precepts diligently. And then from time to time, one takes on the eight precepts for a short designated amount of time as a way of strengthening one's practice. So to talk a bit more about the eight precepts, we'll be zeroing in on the four which are different from the five precepts. Since I had already spoken in detail about the five precepts recently, you can look at that talk if you're interested. So of the eight precepts, we're going to be looking at number 3, then number 6, 7, and 8. So number 3 is abrahmacharya vairamani. So the term brahmacharya, it literally means divine behavior or spiritual behavior. But in the context at the time, this term was usually understood to refer to celibacy. There's a few places where it's used in a broader context to mean a spiritual life in a more general sense, but usually it's understood to mean celibacy. So to completely avoid any kind of sexual activity. This includes sexual activity with other people, but also it includes by oneself. So the idea is to try for a period of time, if one is a layperson, for maybe for a day or a few days, to try for a period of time to relinquish sexual desire, to let go of the desire and attachment for sexual pleasure, and instead to cultivate a mind of contentment, a mind which is peaceful and okay with things as they are, a mind which is happy and enjoying the present moment without needing any particular sensation or any particular experience. And it's also useful because it helps to avoid unnecessary entanglements and emotional disturbances and conflicts, which can easily arise when one is engaging in reckless sexual activity. The sixth of the eight precepts is not eating afternoon or before dawn. So one sets a limit on one's food consumption. So only eating during the morning between dawn and noon. So a designated period of time, which depending on the time of the year, it's usually somewhere around 6 hours or so that one can eat, which is plenty of time. It's enough to have breakfast and lunch if you want. But for the vast majority of people, you can get enough food to eat just eating in the morning. So the idea here is that you just eat in the morning, and then the rest of the day you fast. You don't eat anything at all. You can still drink water and fruit juice and things of that sort, and coffee and tea. So simple things, but no substantial food. So this is a way of looking at our relationship to food. So often when we're experiencing some kind of dukkha, so some kind of discomfort or depression or discontent, often one of the ways we resolve that is by having a snack or doing some cooking or doing something sensual of that sort. And often when we're eating, then we're eating for the sake of pleasure, for the sake of distraction or enjoyment, rather than for the real purpose of food, which is nourishment and health. So that's also one of the standard practices in Buddhist monasteries is we recite every day before lunch, we recite contemplation from the Buddha, which is that food is not for fun, not for pleasure, but only for our physical health and to support our spiritual practice. So taking on the practice of only eating in the morning for a short period of time can be a way of starting to get a different perspective on our relationship with food, trying to shift our relationship with food to a more functional way, relating to food as something which serves a clear function, a clear direct purpose, which is supporting our physical health and our spiritual practice. And it also gives a sense of spaciousness to the day, because then in the afternoon and the evening, you don't need to worry about preparing food or cooking food or eating food or cleaning up after cooking and eating. So you'll discover you have more time. And also, you don't need to worry about the heaviness that comes after eating, because after you've had your morning meal, then you're done. For the rest of the day, you're done, which means you'll have some dullness from whatever you eat in the morning, but then for the rest of the day, your body will feel light and your mind will feel clear and energetic. So that's the practice of not eating after noon is a very valuable thing to experience, something which is supportive to our practice. Then the seventh precept, which is in Pali, Nachikita Vajita Vasukadasana Mala Ganda Vilepanadhara Mandana Vipusanatana Veramani. So Nachigita Vajita Vasukadasana means dance, song, music, and watching shows. So this is covering all kinds of entertainment. So whether one is watching, dancing and singing and so on, or whether one is doing it oneself, dancing and singing and so on. In either case, it's a form of entertainment, a form of unrefined sensual pleasure, something which we do in order to distract ourselves and to try to produce pleasant sensual experiences. So by relinquishing those things for a period of time, then one is training the mind in contentment, in simplicity, and equanimity. One is teaching the mind unconditional happiness. And this is especially visible with things like the song and watching shows, and that for many people, they're very seriously addicted to music, very seriously addicted to watching TV or watching movies or playing video games. So very addicted to these things and feeling like they need to do these things in order to get by, that these things are necessary for their well-being and happiness. But actually, when you watch the mind, you'll see that these just agitate and disturb the mind. They make the mind unsettled and unstable rather than peaceful and serene. And in Buddhist practice, we're trying to train the mind to be peaceful, to be serene, to be calm, to be tranquil, to be joyful, even when there's nothing going on. So working on breaking our addiction to entertainment is a very valuable way of training the mind in unconditional happiness. And the second half of this precept, Mala Ganda Vilepana Dharana Vibhusanatana. So this is about wearing jewelry, about wearing physical ornaments such as necklaces and garlands and so on, flowers. It's about wearing cosmetics, so wearing makeup, wearing perfume, fragrances, and so on. So any kind of thing that we do in order to increase our physical beauty and attractiveness. And so putting all of those things down and starting to look at why. Why is it that we're interested in dressing up nicely and wearing cute clothes and wearing various adornments and things to make our bodies look more beautiful? Well, what's going on there? Why do we think this is necessary or important? And you start to realize that so much of it is bound up in our self-centeredness. It's bound up in our ego, our fixation on me. And often it's bound up in trying to get something from other people, and how we relate to other people. We're trying to get a pleasant response from other people. Or our self-esteem. It's connected with our sense of self-esteem. So we start to examine all of that, and we start to realize how much of our attachment to physical ornamentation is actually ultimately about self-centeredness and desire. So putting that down for a period of time is a way of training the mind in being not self-centered. And we start to recognize that egocentrism is in fact painful to us. It's not a source of happiness, it's actually a source of pain. Similarly, the anxiety over how others perceive us, the anxiety over whether others perceive our body as beautiful or ugly. Well, we can also drop all of that anxiety. Actually, one of the really nice things about living in Buddhist monasteries is nobody cares how beautiful you are or how ugly you are. It just doesn't matter to us. Because we're not involved in the whole attraction game, then things about physical attractiveness are just completely meaningless to us. And also because we value the wholesomeness of a person's heart, the value of their spiritual practice. This is what we consider beautiful. Then we're not interested in someone's physical appearance. We're not interested in how pretty someone looks on the outside. We're interested in how beautiful their heart is, how beautiful their spiritual qualities are. So the Buddha spoke about our spiritual practice as something that beautifies the heart, that beautifies the mind from the inside. And that's the kind of beautification that we want to be doing. Then the eighth precept in Pali, Uchasayana Mahasayana Vairamani. So this means fancy and luxurious bedding. So in monasteries, it's common to just have a simple mattress or pad on the ground. So just sleeping very simple way. So bare minimum. So just like a small basic mattress with one pillow. You don't really need much more than that. Sufficient blankets for however cold it is, but that's it. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. And one of the problems is that when we have big, fancy, luxurious bedding, then we just want to lounge around in bed all day. Just want to take long naps. You don't want to get up in the morning because your bed is so nice and pleasant, and tend to oversleep. So instead, having very simple, functional bedding, which just serves the purpose of giving you a good sleep at night, and that's it. That's all it is. So rather than being a source of sensual indulgence, it just serves a simple bare function, which is one of the principles of Buddhist monastic training, is trying to pare everything down to the bare functional essentials, and understanding what actually is the minimum that's needed. So often when following this precept, then people will sleep on a grass mat rather than a big, thick, comfortable mattress. Instead, they'll sleep on a grass mat or even a yoga mat, or just directly on a carpet, or even directly on the hard floor, and see how that changes your relationship with sleep. You might find that you sleep less than you normally do, but that somehow it's sufficient. You might find that you sleep less than normal, but your mind still feels bright and alert and refreshed when you wake up in the morning. And also then, because your bed is not particularly comfortable, then you'll be inspired to sit up and do some meditation rather than sleeping in the morning. So that's a brief overview of the 8 precepts. Again, these are renunciant practices for training the mind in letting go of desire, attachment, and self-centeredness. But these are not moral principles. This really is important to emphasize. So the 5 precepts are moral principles, whereas the additions made in the 8 precepts are to add in renunciation practices. So extra practices for lay people that can help give them a sense of the value of renunciation. And of course, for monastic life, these are essential foundations of how we live. So at this time, I can go ahead and take some questions. So I see many more people joining in. So we can go ahead and uh, conclude with 3 sadhus, and then I'll start going to the questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So Prajna says, from which country are you? It's off topic, but just briefly, I'm American. I'm from the USA. Niranjan says, Venerable Bhikkhu, really follows 8 precept. Well, I do. And uh, most of the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis that I know also follow at least the 8 precepts. So this is really basic stuff. If one is a monk, then the 8 precepts is really basic. Usually we're following a lot more than the 8 precepts. But these are really basic foundations of what it means to live a renunciant spiritual life. So yes, if one is living a monastic life, then it's to be expected that one is at least following the 8 precepts. And Haiyang says, is sexual activity or desire in the mind only, but no physical activity is involved, is also considered breaking the 3rd precept? Technically, no. So if there's mental activity, like you notice sexual desire arising in the mind or sexual fantasy appearing in the mind, that mental activity is not breaking the 3rd precept, as long as you don't do any physical activity based upon that mental activity. So this is actually one of the values of taking this precept of celibacy, is that it helps you to start observing the mind more clearly and to notice how there's always some movement in the mind prior to engaging in any kind of physical activity. So of course it's better to try to keep the mind pure, because if you are taking the precept of celibacy, then that means you can't act on your desires. So whatever mental desire you're feeding, it will just torment you because you can't act it out. So it's better to drop it and direct the mind towards other things, because it's not going to do you any good. If you have a practice of celibacy, then sexual desire is just going to torment you. It's not going to bring any happiness to you. And actually, this is always the case, even for people who aren't celibate. It's more clear when one is. Hayang also asks, is telling a lie to save oneself or family from harm considered breaking the 4th precept? Yes. Yeah, that is still breaking the precept. But when you're in a situation like that, then you need to try to evaluate. First off, is there a way to protect yourself and your family without breaking the precept, without telling a lie? Try to be creative and explore options and see if there's a way to protect your family without telling a lie. But if you are in a situation where you feel like that's really the only option, well, first off, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself that that's what you're doing. Be honest with yourself that you're breaking a precept and that you're doing so out of what you think are good motivations. But that doesn't change the fact that you're breaking a precept and doing something unwholesome in the process. So you're producing mixed karma, a mixture of good karma and bad karma. So be honest with yourself that that's what you're doing. So having good motivations for doing something immoral, it mixes in some good karma, but you still have the bad karma of doing something immoral. And Sud says, do these 8 precepts help in realizing things like stream entry? Yes. Yeah, because again, these are things which accelerate our practice or increase the strength of our practice. So yes, they can help us more quickly progress along the path to stream entry, the first stage of awakening. So yes, that is part of their value. Astroman says, does eating eggs break the first precept, or milk or cheese? No. No. So the first precept is quite clear. It's about deliberately killing a sentient being. So, in the case of eating eggs, well, an egg is not a sentient being. It's just an egg. And if you kill the chicken, then that's breaking the first precept. But if you eat an egg, then you haven't killed anyone. So there's no precept breaking. Similarly with milk and cheese, so you're not killing a cow. The cow is still alive. Um, you're just drinking some milk or eating some cheese. So you're not killing anything. So that's not breaking this precept. I mean, there are good ethical reasons why one might be a vegan. So, um, of course, I'm not opposed to veganism. I think that for many people, it's actually a quite reasonable way of practicing compassion. Uh, at the time of this video, I'm not currently vegan, but I have been at times in the past, and I do respect that practice. But it is not required by the precept. The precept is just about not killing sentient beings. Technically, that doesn't even mandate vegetarianism. It's just about not killing. And Kumo says, does applying body lotion for medical conditions such as dry skin come under beautification? I would say no. I would say that's medicine. So using a medicinal ointment is actually in the monastic rules, it's specifically permitted to use medicinal ointments. So that's not considered to be beautification in the same way that makeup and cosmetics are. But rather it's something which is done for sustaining the health of the body. So dry skin can be a harmful medical condition, and we should take care of it appropriately. So no, that's not beautification. Let It Go, Let It Be says, can you tell us how Ayya Palignani is? I assume you're asking because normally Ayya Palignani was doing this live stream session at this time. As far as I know, she's okay. She just asked to take a break from doing the live streams for a while. So we've been doing it instead. Yeah. And Sud asks, when should a layperson follow the 8 precepts? What does the Buddha prescribe to lay people as to when we should follow the 8 precepts? Well, what we see in the suttas is to follow the 8 precepts on every Uposatha day. So the full moon and the new moon. And if you wish, you can also do the half moons. But normally it's the full moon and the new moon. And you do it for one day. So for one 24-hour period of time. You follow the 8 precepts. That's the normal practice. Also, whenever staying in a monastery, normally while staying in a monastery, one follows the 8 precepts, even if you're just going for a day. But if you're staying for a few days or a week or longer, then you would follow the 8 precepts the entire time you're at the monastery. Yeah, you can also try taking the 8 precepts for a period of several days, but when living a normal lay life, it's often not very convenient. So unless you have a few days off from work or something and you want to follow the 8 precepts during those days, that's okay. But usually on your normal days when you have a job and you have your family and you have your social commitments and so on, then the 8 precepts are normally not very convenient on normal layperson days. But on days off, it can be done. So some people follow the 8 precepts on their weekends or their free days, and that's a good practice you can do. And it looks like that's the last question. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the session at this time. So we'll end with 3 more sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you next time.